Here are some problems with Firestarter. This is a new series I'm doing on Payday 2's maps. Fair warning, the road ahead is filled with nitpicking the tiniest of problems. I'm hardly trying to call Payday 2 literally unplayable, but when you've played this game as long as I have, you start to notice little problems all around. Will fixing these small problems make the game look, play, or run any better? Well, probably not. Regardless, if there are any level artists or designers at Overkill who have a few hours to kill fixing small problems, as you've shown Will to do in the past, then here's a list of problems with Firestarter. Starting with the first day, Airport. In the Heist spawn, you'll notice straight away that the light beams casting down from the streetlight are improperly aligned, and behind the van in the distance, that streetlight is lacking them altogether. Climbing down the hill near the staircase to the left is a streetlight with more disconnected lighting, and in fact, the streetlight itself isn't even glowing at all. Hopping up onto this rooftop where you'd gain access to the vantage point, you can find something called Z fighting in these concrete structures. This is what happens when two objects are occupying the exact same space and are fighting to render on top of one another. Moving your camera around makes this painfully obvious. The solution to this problem would be adjusting the geometry so these brushes or props don't collide. Another example is on the wall of this roof structure just next to the concrete, where the upper trim is colliding with the wall itself. While we're here, this light is visibly active but doesn't appear to be casting any actual light, and this electrical box near the entrance to the vantage point is a red glow with no apparent source. Further up on the vantage point, you can see the fences clipping pretty far into the metal huts in this inaccessible part of the map, and just below that, this entire metal trimming has some nasty Z fighting, particularly near this staircase. Hopping down from the vantage point, we'll make our way into the alley just below it. You can see some more Z fighting where this metal support beam collides with the wall. More interestingly, down the stairs and around this corner, this bit of wall occludes itself without being obscured, meaning you can see through the map and into the void. Walking through this alley, you can see these clearly blue lights are glowing yellow. I'm surprised I've never noticed this before. There's also this one pipe here that doesn't connect to anything and should frankly just be removed. And these two pipes are Z fighting with one another. Let's swing back to the hill and take a look at the other alleyway on the left side of the map. These lights here, which are used frequently throughout the entire map, are not visually active despite casting light. All of the streetlights through this alleyway are not visually active, and the light source on this one is disconnected from the bulb. In the alley itself, this ductwork is Z fighting with itself, and there's a bit of wall or prop or some odd sticking out of the wall. Over here is a light that, despite glowing, doesn't cast any light. Or I guess it does? It looks pretty bad and is yellow either way. While this is admittedly more of a gameplay complaint, I would really appreciate it if we can open up these dumpsters like we can on every other stealth map. Then again, this heist isn't really supposed to be stealthed. Going into the main area of the map, at the enemy spawn near the radio control building on the right side of the map, you can see some more Z fighting with a beam intersecting through the outer wall. And there's an improperly mapped texture inside of the building itself. Most of the hangars themselves are okay, although props on the folding tables tend to float a good distance above the tables themselves. In the back right warehouse spawn, the walls aren't quite lined up properly with the floor, and you can see through a crack into the void below. When heading out of this heist, I noticed the skybox is pretty bad. I mean, this is more of a problem with nighttime skyboxes in Payday in general, but have they always been this bad? Maybe it's just because I have my brightness maxed out and that screws with it, I don't know. And finally, on the way out, for some reason, as soon as you enter the escape zone, the heist instantly ends, instead of giving your heisters their usual moment to celebrate. As far as I can remember, this is the only heist that does this. That's day 1, so let's move on to day 2, the FBI offices. This heist seems pretty good overall, with a much simpler layout to thank. That doesn't mean there aren't problems. The lampposts just outside of the map boundaries don't have light beams coming out of them. These posts could just be removed, frankly, assuming performance is the reason for the lack of light. The fence that sometimes spawns in the front of the left alleyway clips through the hedges pretty badly, and these C-shaped pot plant things, what are these called anyways, have Z fighting on their inner corners. And these ceiling lights outside appear to be on but aren't actually casting any light as far as I can tell. Once inside, if the server room spawned downstairs, you can see that the wall trim doesn't match up with the rest of the wall. This doesn't happen upstairs. The wire boxes show Mercy Hospital blueprints as they were repurposed assets from Payday the Heist, and areas where wire boxes could potentially spawn but didn't will still have shading as if there is a box there. This could be intentional, intentional in some weird way, I guess? Similar to these trees on the roof of the building above the lobby. I'm guessing this is some sort of weird hipster roof garden, but the actual thing that bothers me is the leaves on top of the skylight float even when there's no glass there. Heading upstairs, the inaccessible double doors, existing just to make the map feel like a real location and spawn enemies, lead into a painfully obvious dead end. These wires spanning across the ceiling have a very low fade out distance and again could just be removed anyways. Further towards the back in this office of sorts, these papers are floating pretty far off the table. And finally, looking through the big bay windows behind that room, you can see a tree growing straight out of the sidewalk in the distance. Again, this heist is much better overall, so let's move on to day 3, Bank Heist. Arguably the most played map in Payday 2, this heist has received plenty of attention, and had many problems fixed over the years. Still, after looking around, I did find some. At the far van spawn around the corner from the bank, there's some graffiti floating off the side of the wall, sprayed on a sign which is also floating. Walking down the street, you can see these stop signs attached to the streetlights don't cast shadows. On the lampposts all around this map are advertisements for the 2014 election, which is what the election day heist was about. While this was a nice feature at the time, we're more than halfway through 2017 now. Might be a good time to change or remove them. Also, none of the lampposts on this map cast shadows. Seriously, none of them. All of the other props in the streets do, but not the lampposts. How did I not notice this sooner? Next to this small dead-end alleyway are some inaccessible rooms that are just there for detailing. However, the floor for this one is strangely misaligned, and both this one and the detail room to the left of it have wall outlets clipping through their doors. Also, the fence itself here has some very minor Zed fighting on the connectors. Again, none of the dumpsters on this map can be opened. Across the street from the bank's front entrance is a salon that has some rubbish on the floor clipping into the wall. At the front entrance of the bank itself, there's a typo on both signs here saying customer where it should say customers. Not to mention the entire sign is just strangely worded. Also, both of these signs are floating pretty far from the wall. Inside the bank, these information pamphlets have the Harvest and Trustee logo cut off. Okay, this is hilariously minor, but hey, I'm here to nitpick. What's not so minor is the very bad Zed fighting in the wall above one of these potential security room spawns. This does not happen if the security room is present at this location. All of the ceiling fans inside of the bank have animation cycles that don't line up properly. There's a bit of a skip when the animation ends. You may have to watch the video at 60 FPS to spot it. Meanwhile, on the roof, there's some electrical boxes that have cables connecting up into thin air. Specific to the Firestarter variant of this map, inside of the security room on the roof, the power box incorrectly states that flipping the switch turns on the power. It actually turns it off. Also, this power box is floating a comical distance away from the wall. I mean, look at this. Back outside and behind the bank, you can see more trees growing straight out of the sidewalk. This is true in most inaccessible parts of the map. And finally, further up the street in front of Raw Sushi Deal, there's some nasty Zed fighting in the sidewalk. And that's everything I could find. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff I missed, although I'll admit there were some problems that were so minor I didn't even bother mentioning them in a video about minor problems. There were other things that I did notice but didn't mention because they are intrinsic Payday 2 problems and not specific to Firestarter, like the terrible cube maps visible in reflections. These are particularly bad on the FBI office heist, but again, that's a problem with the diesel engine and not the heist itself. So that's it then. If anybody at Overkill is watching this, seeing some of these incredibly tiny problems being fixed would be neat. I mean, polish is always nice. For everybody else, leave a comment telling me which heist you want me to nitpick next. Thanks for watching, and take it easy.